Hello and welcome back to Vox Terra. Here is a recent headline, November 20th of 2023 to be precise, that I believe deserves a heck of a lot more attention. Industry meddling sabotages plastics treaty talks. From Common Dreams. Now, for some background, let's just start with why much of the world's population thinks we could use some kind of treaty like this to limit plastic production. Plastics, and here we are talking, my friend, about petrochemical plastics, meaning plastics made from an oil or a natural gas source as their feedstock chemical, rather than necessarily like a plant-based plastic, because I believe plastic just means like a malleable material. You know, the entire process of petrochemical plastic manufacturing creates a lot of underreported greenhouse gases and very real toxins. Toxins to like our nervous system, endocrine system, and carcinogens. We have toxicity and greenhouse gas at almost every stage. The extraction of fossil fuels, fracking, the injection of chemicals into the water, then the disposal of those contaminated waters. The refining, think about the people living near those petrochemical refining facilities in Louisiana, the high cancer rates. The use of it, the leaching of chemicals into your food from it, and the disposal, the breaking down of it into microplastics, the very failed and non-existent recycling programs. Well, so in response to this, here's a really neat United Nations headline. UN Environmental Program, March 2nd of 2022, this press release I'm sharing with you. Historic day in the campaign to beat plastic pollution. Nations commit to develop a legally binding agreement. Nairobi, March 2nd of 2022. Heads of state, ministers of environment, and other representatives from UN member states endorsed a historic resolution at the UN Environmental Assembly to end plastic pollution and forge an internationally legally binding agreement by 2024. The resolution will address the full life cycle of plastic, including its production, design, and disposal. So the idea what a lot of environmentally concerned people want is they want reusable products and reduction of plastic production in the first place. And then some maybe more focus on more natural, less toxic materials. And here, note that 2024 goal to have a binding agreement. But just prior to that meeting, I want to highlight through a Reuters article titled, UN Pact May Restrict Plastic Production. Big Oil Aims to Stop It. February 18th of 2022. The industry is projected to double plastic output worldwide within 2 decades. Wow, double it at a time when everyone knows we're choking in it. And here we're going to see a very similar dynamic play out to the undermining of all of these climate agreements. No binding commitments, and that's coming from that fossil fuel petrochemical industry. And they point out that publicly, plastic industry groups have expressed support for global agreements to tackle this garbage. But behind the scenes, these trade organizations are devising strategies to persuade conference goers to reject any deal that would limit plastic manufacturing. And that's a similar dynamic with our heating planet. We'll hear representatives from the fossil fuel industry say, we support a climate tax and we're working for solutions. But then behind the scenes, they're lobbying like heck to make sure those things don't happen, to keep that spigot of oil flowing, brother. Back to that Reuters article, leading that effort is the American Chemistry Council, a powerful group of US-based oil and chemical firms. And here I think it's kind of neat to note that it's US-based because really, sometimes the public buys into supporting these industries because they hear it's our American industries. Just think of it as just based here. And the ACC dubbed their proposed alliance the Business for Plastic Pollution Action. And I want to highlight that to you because, it's so often that these industry front groups create what I would call fake environmental groups to muddy the waters and confuse the public further. That's why it's pretty important, in my opinion, to donate to real environmental groups, read their literature, kind of keep your, finger on the pulse of what they're saying. And really interesting from that Reuters article is the only reason Reuters even knew about this proposed alliance they're trying to forge is because of a leaked email to them. So think about how many of these kind of what I'm calling real conspiracies, the everyday conspiracy of how we protect this industry, keep making money the way we're making it, suppress an alternative, a greener alternative, how often those conspiracies never see the light of day, and then when they do, how little attention they get in the media, which is connected to these dominant industries or funded by it. But how much attention social media gives to what I call fake conspiracies that are really serve the purpose of defending business as usual by portraying those trying to protect our environment as part of some conspiracy to take away freedom, when really it's just, we could say it's just the opposite. So now let's come up a little more to the present, and here's another Common Dreams article, which was published with the Center for Biological Diversity. I think they might have been one of the authors. And the headline of this article is, Companies Pushing Weak UN Plastics Treaty Dump Millions into U.S. Elections. And that's a November 17th of 2023 article. And I thought this was really telling about who registered to attend this UN conference. Listen to this. 143 fossil fuel and chemical industry lobbyists registered to attend the third session of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee in Nairobi, Kenya. So apparently this is the third of those meetings, far surpassing the 38 members of scientific coalitions participating in the negotiations. And some of these industry reps or industries they list are ExxonMobil, Chevron, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, and Dow. And industry lobbying groups they mention are American Chemistry Council, the American Fuel and Petrochemical Manufacturers, and the International Council of Beverage Associations. And they highlight over 20 million scamoli spent on lobbying and campaign contributions in 2022 election cycle by the, I believe, American Chemistry Council. And then Center for Biological Diversity also pointed out that Boeing spent more than 17 million. Here, I guess we're touching on that military-industrial complex, maybe why they brought that one up. And Chevron shelled out nearly 15 million. So now you got these buckets of money coming in here, the media ignoring it, and then we get to November 20th of 2023, again, Common Dreams, Industry Meddling Sabotages Plastics Treaty. Now, just so you don't get too frustrated and hopeless, well, it ain't totally over yet, but that article pointed out that that meeting came out with little concrete progress on plastics reduction, use, any of it, recycling, the whole thing, and with little concrete because of this meddling. Now, interestingly, Common Dreams cited the French press agency as laying some of the blame on oil-producing nations. They're citing specifically Russia, Saudi Arabia, Iran. But the Center for Biological Diversity, which I believe is an American-based group, chose to look at our, quote, actions, which I think makes more sense because that's where Americans have more influence over. Noted that the American government made little interest in having any firm commitments, but apparently kept things kind of vague. And the Center for International Law went a little further, accusing the U.S. of trying to water down the treaty. So also, the U.S. we're a large oil and gas producing country. And the Center for International Law, I thought importantly, really focused on the role of petrochemical manufacturers and their lobbying influence and their political influence, as did the Center for Biological Diversity. I think that's a critical distinction because, in my opinion, one, that French press agency is sort of focusing on nations or nation states or governments alone, whereas I think it's really important, in my opinion, to focus on the influence, the power that these dominant industries have within governments and how they are the ones driving those governments. One, in my opinion, creates anger at a whole foreign nation and a targeted group of people. The other one creates anger at let's say, a business interest even within your own country that spans numerous countries, and how that's manipulating it. I think it's pretty clear, in my opinion, which is the healthier outlet for anger or public focus. Well, as not everything is lost yet, talks are set to resume in Ottawa in 2024. April of 2024, apparently. And here, Common Dreams quotes Graham Forbes of Greenpeace, who's one of the delegates. We need to find a way forward without oil and gas producers dictating the terms of our survival. We have 1 year to turn this around. Well, that's a lot of pressure, but I think the moral here is that we need to support those, what I'm calling real environmental groups. And just be aware of how these dominant industries dominate governments and then public opinion. and that they shape the game rules, they shape the rules of the market to favor them and keep out less polluting alternatives. And that the only really viable counterweight I'm seeing to them are these like environmental organizations, which are not, quote, fake ones sponsored by those industry groups, but have some independence from this system of buying and selling and buying we're all trapped in. And the other massive moral, in my opinion, is that since we lost, or we defeated, we in quotes here, defeated the Soviet Union, which was largely a public sector-based economy, we really defeated the only real direct competitor to this system we're stuck in. And that, I think, is a problem, because capitalism functions better with competition. It really needs a socialist competitor, some kind of a public system competitor. It needs some form of competition introduced back into the system. Well, amigo, I hope you found this an interesting analysis of how our world and why it's operating the way it is, why we're drowning in plastics, pumping our biosphere full of toxic chemicals and heat-trapping gases, and why so few are really standing up to do anything about it, and why so many seem to defend status quo either inadvertently or vertently. And if you did, inadvertently, I know it's not a real word, but it should be. And if you did, please make sure you are subscribed to my channel. You've clicked that notification bell. You're liking, you're commenting. Constructive criticism is welcome, really, on anything, pacing, any of it, the way I'm talking, the whole thing, just what would work better for you, what wouldn't. Thank you to my two patrons of Patreon, Bella Lugrusi, Environmental Coffee House. And if I could get another person donating Patreon, that'd be terrific. Maybe you could, because this show is a heck of a lot of work, very time consuming, and it has come at a big opportunity cost to me these past 5 years. And as always, until next time, peace be with you.